name is Martha Horvay, and welcome to my studio. My studio is in the lower level of my house in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's about 400 square feet, which isn't very big, but neither is my work, so that works out. The main area is about 25 by 16 feet. So I have a lot of south-facing light, which is nice because it looks out on my stairwell flower bed, and in my non-art life, I am a great promoter of native and edible landscaping. So I really appreciate the Nebraska prairie grasses. In fact, I have a lot of them growing in my front yard. So along my windowsill, you can see some objects. There are a lot of seashells, some rocks, and some ceramic things that I have made, and some cacti. I put these here just because they inspire me, and I like to look at them. So right here is my main work table. It's a big wooden drafting table, about 4 by 8 feet, on which I have my paints and brushes and all the tools that I use for painting. Over here, on the wall, there are more tools, a lot of drafting equipment. When I went to college, I majored in product design, and this was in the pre-digital age, so we used T-squares and triangles. I feel very comfortable with them, and I still use them. You'll also see I have a CD player, but I rarely listen to music in my studio because another part of my life is dedicated to practicing the piano, and I love classical music to the extent where I cannot listen to it casually. But what I do like to listen to is the hum of the dehumidifier, which is great because it's almost like wearing earplugs. It blots out all extraneous noise, and then that helps me focus. So I'll show you what I do in my studio. I'm very taken by things with simple geometric form, and that's why I think I like to look at the cacti and the seashells. And I'm also very intrigued by pattern, and I have a lot of books on pattern, like this one, and I particularly like patterns that have implied depth in them. So what I do is scan patterns from books. In an area that is behind you, there's a computer and a home laundry and areas for storing paintings. But what I do is scan the books and print them out. And so here I have a lot of different patterns, and they're grouped by color and form. Here are red swirls. I found these to be very useful. And there are moire patterns, waves, etc. So I cut these out and make collages out of them, and then I add acrylic to the collages. Here's one that is completed, and often when I'm working, I begin a collage, I'll scan it, I'll try out some changes in it in Photoshop Elements, which is kind of a Photoshop Light program, decide whether I want to use those, and then some of them get incorporated into the finished piece. Now this is like sketching for me, and one of the reasons it works well is because although I do things that look sort of like still life, I do not set up still life objects and paint them as I see them. What I'm trying to do is get at the essence of those geometric forms, or what inspires me about them. You could say how they touch my heart or my unconscious, and in some ways I have to connect to my intuition. So the collage helps me do that because it really takes me it's impossible using these patterns to make something highly realistic. So I just let my imagination run freely. And what really helps is going through my scrap bins full of little pieces of paper with printed patterns on them. And sometimes I drop them in ways that suggest something to me, that inspires me, and then I might glue that into my journal just as a placeholder for an idea, not that this is going to become the finished image. So once I get a collage that I like, I think about making a painting from it. And of course, there's lots of things that change when you enlarge something. So I draw it larger on my slate blackboard. Now this was pulled out of a dumpster at University of Nebraska Lincoln in the days when they were updating from blackboards to green boards. Now they've made many updates since then, but I really like drawing on slate, and it's, you know, with a piece of chalk, it's almost like drawing with a stick of butter. So I'll draw it larger and see how it feels at that size. But once I'm ready to paint, I'm moving over here to my work table, and I don't work on an easel, but on this rolling hospital cart, which I can tilt. I can raise and lower it. I can rotate it for getting at areas of the painting more easily. I work in many layers of acrylic, and that actually creates a pretty brittle surface because I add a lot of things like modeling paste to it. So I can't paint on canvas because it's flexible. I don't want the painting to crack, and I have to paint on something rigid, so I paint on these shallow boxes, which I build out of birch plywood and poplar. I make them in a makerspace on the UNL campus called Innovation Studios, where anybody can pay to use their marvelous wood shop. So here you see just the early stages of a painting. There may be 5 or 6 layers on top of this. These shapes will definitely not turn out pink in the end, but I paint them pink at the beginning because I want a little bit of that to show through by the time I'm done. And I paint with not only brushes, but a lot of painting knives that look like kind of little trowels, and these squeegees with paintbrush handles that allow me to move paint around. And then when I want to take paint off to create more texture, I use kind of waterproof sandpaper and a big puddle of water on the the board. So that's how I actually execute paintings, and that's pretty much how I use my studio. Thank you for visiting.